All right, so you ready to dive into something pretty epic?
Let's do it. I'm all ears.
Today we're taking a look at evolutionary biology. That whole how did life on Earth get to be so amazing thing.
And trust me, it is amazing. The story of life on our planet is just mind-blowingly vast and complex, but we're going to try and break it down for you. Hit those major milestones in the evolution of everything that's ever lived here.
It's like a greatest hits of life on Earth, but instead of a few hours, it's, well, billions of years, right? I mean, just to start with, our planet is roughly 4.5 billion years old. It's hard to even wrap your head around that kind of time scale.
It really is. And what always gets me is how early life appears to have emerged.
Right, like way early.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the evidence we have is always being updated, but right now, it looks like life might have been present before 3.7 billion years ago.
You're talking about those biogenic carbon signatures
Yeah.
and those super old stromatolite fossils they found in Greenland.
Exactly. Those are some of the earliest solid clues we have.
And then there's that stuff in Australia, the potential traces of life in those rocks that are like 4.1 billion years old.
Oh, right, right. Those are some of the oldest rocks on the planet.
I mean, it's wild to think about. And then there's all that debate going on about those hydrothermal vent precipitates. Some folks think those could push the origin of life back even further to something like 4.28 billion years ago.
Yeah, it's incredible. Seems like every time we find something new, we have to rewrite the very beginning of the story of life.
And it all leads back to this one idea. The idea that everything alive today, from like the tiniest bacteria to us to, I don't know, a blue whale, shares a common ancestor.
It's true. It's like one enormous ancient family tree.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back. Picture Earth in its early days, the Archean eon. Back then, life was pretty basic. We're talking about microbial mats, communities of bacteria and archaea. That's pretty much it.
Simple, but super important. Because it's within these communities that we see some of the most important evolutionary innovations happening.
Like photosynthesis. I mean, that's a game changer right there.
Absolutely. Around 3.5 billion years ago, these little guys, cyanobacteria, figured out how to use sunlight to create energy. That's photosynthesis in a nutshell.
It's like they invented solar power, right?
Basically.
Right.
And in the process, they started releasing oxygen. But here's the thing. That oxygen didn't just immediately fill the atmosphere.
It didn't. Where'd it go?
It reacted with other things. See, the early oceans were full of dissolved iron and other substances that really like to combine with oxygen. So a lot of that oxygen produced by the cyanobacteria essentially got used up in a giant rusting process.
So it's like Earth was slowly absorbing all that oxygen.
Exactly. For a long time, those reactions acted like a giant oxygen sink.
But at some point, those sinks got full, right?
They did. And that's when we get the Great Oxygenation Event, around 2.4 billion years ago. But once there wasn't anything left to readily react with all that oxygen, it started building up in the atmosphere.
And that's a big deal because oxygen is pretty reactive. I mean, it can be toxic to a lot of organisms, right?
It can be. In fact, it was a major challenge for a lot of the anaerobic life that existed at the time. But it also opened up incredible opportunities for new life forms that could use oxygen to their advantage.
Okay, so oxygen is in the air. What happens next?
This is when things start to get really interesting, because all that oxygen, while initially a problem for some, provided a whole new source of energy. And that leads us to the emergence of eukaryotes.
These are the cells with all the bells and whistles, right? Like a nucleus and mitochondria and stuff.
Exactly. Eukaryotic cells are much more complex than bacteria or archaea. They have internal compartments, these membrane-bound organelles that carry out specific functions. And the earliest convincing evidence we have for these eukaryotes dates back to about 1.85 billion years ago.
And how did these more complex cells even come about?
The leading theory is something called symbiogenesis. Basically, it's the idea that one cell engulfed another, but instead of digesting it, they started working together.
So like a tiny roommate situation.
Yeah, kind of. It's thought that an early anaerobic archaeon engulfed an aerobic proteobacterium. This little bacterium didn't get digested, and over time, it evolved into what we now know as the mitochondrion.
The powerhouse of the cell.
You got it. Mitochondria are responsible for aerobic respiration, which is a super efficient way to generate energy using oxygen.
So basically, this ancient team-up was a huge win in terms of energy production.
A total game changer. This allowed for the development of larger, more complex cells. And it didn't stop there. Around 1.6 billion years ago, we see another endosymbiotic event this time involving cyanobacteria being engulfed.
So another cell moves in.
Yep. And these cyanobacteria eventually evolved into plastids, like chloroplasts, which are the organelles responsible for photosynthesis in algae and plants.
So we go from simple cells to complex cells with their own internal energy factories, and now some of them can even make their own food using sunlight. It's like evolution is leveling up, right?
It's a pretty amazing progression.
And then we get another massive leap.
Right.
Multicellularity.
Right. Around 1.7 billion years ago, we start seeing organisms made up of multiple cells. And these cells aren't all doing the same thing. They're specialized, working together as a unit.
It's like going from a bunch of solo artists to a full-blown orchestra.
A perfect analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And around this time, we also see the evolution of sexual reproduction.
Which, let's be honest, seems kind of complicated, right? I mean, asexual reproduction seems way more straightforward.
We'd think so.
Mm.
But sexual reproduction, with all its complexities, offers a huge long-term advantage: genetic diversity.
Okay, explain that. How does mixing genes help?
Well, think about it this way. Asexual reproduction is like making copies of a book. You get a lot of the same book, which is great if the environment stays the same. But if things change, you might need a different story.
Okay, so sexual reproduction is like shuffling the pages of a bunch of different books, creating new combinations.
Exactly. That genetic mixing allows populations to adapt more quickly to changing conditions, and it helps them resist diseases and parasites better. It's like having a constantly evolving library of possibilities.
All right, so we've got these increasingly complex multicellular organisms. Some of them are making their own food. They're mixing up their genes. And then they decide to head out of the water.
Well, it wasn't exactly a conscious decision, but yeah, the colonization of land was a major event in evolutionary history. Now, we do know that microbial life had already made it onto land as far back as 2.7 billion years ago, but we're talking about larger, more complex organisms.
Right, and going from water to land is a big change. It's a whole new set of challenges.
Absolutely. Things like drying out, staying upright without the buoyancy of water, and getting nutrients from the soil. These were big hurdles to overcome.
So how did they manage?
Microorganisms were actually really important in paving the way. They started the process of soil formation, creating a more hospitable environment. And then, eventually, plants, which are thought to have evolved from freshwater green algae around 1 billion years ago, started colonizing land.
And those early plants had a huge impact on the planet, right?
They did. Think of those early forests, like the ones dominated by Archaeopteryx in the late Devonian period. Their extensive root systems broke down rocks, releasing nutrients into the soil, and they were pulling huge amounts of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which contributed to global cooling and a drop in sea level.
So they weren't just living on land, they were changing it.
Exactly. And their impact reached even beyond that. All that weathering and nutrient runoff from the land might have even triggered algal blooms in the oceans. It just goes to show how interconnected everything is.
Okay, so plants are on land, transforming the planet. What about animals? When did they join the party?
The first clear evidence we have for bilaterian animals, meaning animals with a distinct left and right side, dates back to around 555 million years ago.
So that's the basic body plan for most animals, including us.
Yep, it's a really successful design. Having a left and right side allows for directed movement and the development of specialized sensory organs at the front end.
Makes sense. And then there's this weird period with the Ediacara biota, right? Those are some strange fossils.
They really are. They show us a whole bunch of diverse multicellular forms,
Yeah.
but it's still not entirely clear how they relate to the animals we see today. Some might not even be animals at all.
We're all oddballs.
But then, boom, we get the Cambrian explosion around 525 million years ago.
That's when things really take off, right?
Yes.
Like an explosion of animal diversity.
Exactly. During the Cambrian, we see the origin of most of the major animal groups that still exist today, including our own phylum, Chordata, which includes all the vertebrates.
So fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, all those groups trace their origins back to the Cambrian explosion.
It was a wild time, a period of intense experimentation with body plans and lifestyles.
And as we move through time, we see different groups rising and falling, right? Like during the Permian period, the synapsids were the dominant land vertebrates.
Right, the synapsids, which are the ancestors of mammals, ruled the Permian world. But, as we see throughout evolutionary history, nothing lasts forever.
Because sometimes things go really wrong. Mass extinctions.
You're talking about events that wipe out a huge percentage of life on Earth. And the biggest one of all was the Permian-Triassic extinction, which happened about 252 million years ago.
That one was devastating, right? Like
Okay.
96% of marine species and 70% of land vertebrates gone.
It was a total reset for life on Earth. But, as always, life finds a way. In the aftermath of the Permian extinction, a group called the archosaurs rose to prominence.
And that group includes some pretty famous members, right? Dinosaurs?
Yep. Dinosaurs are part of the archosaur lineage, along with crocodiles and birds, and they dominated terrestrial ecosystems throughout the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods.
But even the mighty dinosaurs eventually met their end.
They did. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, around 66 million years ago, wiped out all the non-avian dinosaurs. It was likely caused by a large asteroid impact.
And that opened up the door for mammals to really diversify and take over. It's like that recurring theme in evolution, right? When one group disappears, another one gets a chance to shine.
It's a pattern we see again and again. These mass extinctions, while tragic, can actually create opportunities for new evolutionary trajectories.
It really makes you realize how dynamic life on Earth is. And speaking of diversity, there's so much of it out there. I mean, it's estimated that there could be 1 trillion species on Earth. A trillion.
It's a mind-boggling number. And most of that diversity is microbial life, stuff we can't even see with the naked eye.
And we've only identified and named a tiny fraction of that, something like 1.75 to 1.8 million species.
It's humbling, isn't it, to think about all the life out there that we still know nothing about.
And it's important to remember that all the life we see today is just a snapshot in time. It represents a tiny fraction of all the species that have ever existed on Earth.
We're looking at the survivors, the descendants of lineages that have faced countless challenges and undergone incredible transformations over millions and billions of years.
It really highlights the power of those key evolutionary innovations we've been talking about.
Like photosynthesis, which completely changed the face of the planet, or endosymbiosis, which gave rise to eukaryotic cells and eventually to plants.
And then there's multicellularity and sexual reproduction, which added whole new levels of complexity and adaptability.
And don't forget about the amazing adaptations that allowed life to conquer land, completely transforming terrestrial ecosystems.
So much has happened. It's been a truly epic journey through evolutionary history.
And we've only scratched the surface. But hopefully this gives you a sense of the sheer scale and wonder of it all.
It's a story of constant change, adaptation, and the incredible resilience of life.
And it's a story that's still being written. We're constantly learning new things about the history of life on Earth. There are still so many mysteries to unravel.
Which is pretty exciting, right? There's always something new to discover.
Absolutely. Evolution is an ongoing process, and we're just starting to understand its complexities.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into evolutionary biology. It's been a wild ride. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll catch you next time.